Let's look at the SQL Query tab. The SQL Query tab, which is this one right here, this sub-tab, opens by default when you make a connection to a server from that home screen. It includes the query editor area and a toolbar that goes with it right here. You can enter statements into the editor area. Right now I have one statement. It ends with a semicolon. That tells me that's the end of the first statement here. And you can run the statements with some of the tools in the query toolbar or with keyboard shortcuts. So here I have use salon. I can say use MySQL if that's the one that you have. And then later I can run this if I want to. But let's look at some of the tools on the toolbar here. Let's look at the second icon first, the little save icon. If I click save here, it's going to save whatever I've typed into that whole query tab, and I can call it something, and maybe I'll throw that into my documents and save it, and then that will be saved. If I ever wanted to open that back up, I could go in, find it, and open it back up. So it's the same one I already had opened, but you can actually save what you've got on there. So the first one's saving it, the second one is saving it, and the first icon is actually opening up a saved SQL script that you already had back into the query tab. Okay, the lightning bolt executes either a selected portion of the statements, or if nothing is selected, it will execute every single statement on the entire page. Be careful here, because if we're running a statement that inserts new data, for example, into our database, if you keep hitting the lightning bolt again and again, it's going to run the insert statement again and again, and you're going to get multiple redundant data entered if you're not careful. So when you're actually entering or manipulating the data or database in some way, make sure you only run the code one time. Okay, the lightning bolt with the insertion point will execute only the statement that your insertion point or keyboard cursor is in at that time, or right near it. It would run if it was right here as well. So if I hit that one, only that one statement will run. Okay, the fourth from the end here, I'm going to skip some of these that we don't use often. The fourth from the end looks like a little broom, is the Beautify icon. If I had my keywords lowercase and I hit the Beautify icon, let me add a new statement here. So if I had said select everything from user, and then I'm going to put another semicolon, that's the end of the next statement, and I hit that Beautify button again. Okay, so it works with that one. So these are the key words, and they will capitalize it. Also put them on their own lines and indented them. So that's kind of a fun thing to make your code look a little bit better, is to use that Beautify button there. Doesn't matter that it was all on one line or is on multiple lines, it would run the same way, but it's best practices to kind of organize it well like that, indent it, and capitalize the keywords. So that's what that one does. The last icon is nice when you have really long lines of code. Sometimes your select lines can get kind of long. This will wrap the text around, so it's not going off the screen. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this one. Now again, I don't want to run both of them maybe, so I could do a few different things here. If I don't want to run this statement, but I do want to run this statement, I could highlight it and then run the lightning bolt, and it will only run what is selected. I could have also put my insertion point in it or near it, and use the lightning bolt with the insertion point, and that would also have just run this one statement and not everything. If nothing's selected and I hit the lightning bolt, it's going to run this one and this one together. And my favorite is the keyboard shortcut. For Windows users, it's Control-Enter. For Mac users, it's Command-Enter. And it's the same as the lightning bolt with the insertion point. It's going to run wherever your insertion point, whatever statement your insertion point is in or near. So that's a good keyboard shortcut. So Control-Enter for Windows, Command-Enter for Mac users. Let's see, the output panel at the bottom here. This is what shows up. The action output is what shows up as the default. It displays a summary of general information or errors. It's going to show the time and the action and the server response over here. The green checks show successful actions, and then I'm going to make an actual error here so we can see, since our current database is bolded MySQL, and I try to select something from a different database, another table from a different database, and I try to run that. I'm going to hit a Command-Enter from my Mac. You'll see I get an error here. So now I have a red X. Instead of a green check mark, I have a red X, and that means it did not run successfully at all, and I get this error code here. Sometimes these error codes can be really long, and sometimes they can be really cryptic and hard to understand what it's saying. MySQL.magazines doesn't exist. That's because it's on the current MySQL database, and it doesn't recognize a magazines table in that database. So if it's a really long error code, you can right-click on that and copy the row, and then go somewhere where you can paste that and read it. And you'll be able to read the whole error in case it's really long and you can't read it all there. But we'll get some good practice with the errors, and over time you'll get better and better at reading what those errors mean and be able to correct your queries by reading those errors. All right. If you need to edit the actual structure of a table, and not just the data in the table, you can use the table editor. This can be opened up by clicking that wrench icon that we saw before. And again, we're not going to really be changing anything here. We're just looking next to one of the tables. Sorry, we're not going to edit the actual schema. I'm going to go ahead and look at that users table again. Hit the wrench icon, and you'll see how this table is designed and set up. Here you can see each column of the table, and you can see the data type, the type of data that's in that column. We have property checkboxes for primary key, not null, unique index, binary, unsigned, zero fill, auto increment, and general. And we're not going to, generated column. We're not going to use a lot of those. We're going to be using primary key, not null, and some auto incrementing in this course. The last area is where you can place default values. If you want your column to just auto populate with a default value, we won't use that too much in here either. And this will all make more sense later as we learn about relational databases and database design. But just remember, if you make changes here, and remember, we're not making changes right now. I'm just showing you this. Don't make changes to this database. But if you were to make changes later on your databases, you would have to click this apply button down here for the changes to actually take effect. It's going to bring up code that you then would actually run to make the changes that you maybe have made up here. So the next video will cover creating a database model called an entity relationship diagram.